Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We are a few minutes late. All was my fault this morning. One of my speakers was set on mute, and I couldn't hear Brother John Bringle, who is joining us today, a 33rd degree Mason, my friend, my brother, teacher, mentor, um, and a great conversationalist. And so we're excited to have John here today to talk to us and talk with us. If you're tuning into this show for the first time, this is the Jesus and Mohammed IRL show. This is a live show. So if you want to chat in your questions, if you want to call in, if you want to be a part of the conversation, that's what this stream is set up for. It's an IRL show. So we're going to do everything in real time. And we're going to have a great conversation today about Jesus, about our own testimonies, and about our paths in Freemasonry. And one of the reasons I wanted to make this a segment that we do periodically, hopefully weekly, if this turns out great, right, John?
Hopefully, yes.
And really dispel some of the disinformation there is about Freemasons. I joined Freemasonry myself about 18 years ago and did not understand what I was joining. I just had a calling to it. And as I became a Freemason, or as I learned how to become, or what it took to become a Freemason and what the organization was about, I was brought to light. I was brought to light in my own faith at the time, which I still carry with me. I was raised in Islam, and I found the faith of my brothers, who the majority of took their oaths and prayed with the Bible. And I was initiated upon the book of my faith at the time, which was the Quran. Now, once you join based on your initial faith, which we'll talk about, you find that all faiths lead down to the same destination, not necessarily the same path. And there's different paths in life. So if there's questions that you have about Freemasonry as we're talking about it, as the topics come up, uh, we'd be happy to answer them. So feel free to chat in. This is an interactive live show. I know typically we start with music and there's a whole opening section, but we are running a little bit late today. And so I wanted to jump right into it. So, Brother Bringle, thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to give the audience a brief overview of who you are and how your path in both Freemasonry and your faith has come along so far in life, and then we'll get into it. We'll start talking.
Okay, so let's try not spend the entire hour on my background in my faith and my Freemasonry because it could well do that. Um, it started very early in my life as far as the spirituality of life is concerned. When I was 6 years old, I met with and found a leader and a mentor for myself in a Lakota medicine man, and he taught me about spirit and that everything has spirit, and so that has kind of guided my life from then on. And so that's 70 years of life that I have been living with this idea that everything has spirit. Then I went on and I became a Methodist minister for a period of time until I called my board of, my board for the church hypocrites because they were, and they didn't like hearing that. Of course, no one does. But that ended my career as a Methodist minister. It did not, however, end my faith. I have studied since I became a Mason in 1995. I have studied all of the religions that I've um, come upon, including those of my brethren, uh, which Masonry does not preclude anyone who has a belief in deity. Um, and we don't claim to know what your deity should be. You are the only one who can do that. and therefore Masonry opens its doors to all men of any faith who have a belief in deity. Um, and so I have maintained that throughout my spiritual life, which has been all of it, and deepened by my relationship with Freemasonry and with the men that I have met within the doors of Freemasonry. And that's a short rundown of who I am and what I've done in my spiritual life and in Masonry. Does
Awesome,
that
great. And you're
cover?
absolutely right. We could go for hours, and hopefully we will over the course of these segments of where we come from and where we are, and then where we're headed in this life. And the purpose of this show is to open up the door to those conversations and dispel the darkness as we bring God's light into our lives, the deity lives, whether you call him Allah, God, or the creator, the source, the grand architect of the universe. We find that it all ultimately leads to the same place. And very much so in my life, I would say not my first, but my real encounter with men of faith was when I joined Freemasonry because I was a young man. I was 21 years old at the time. And
Yeah.
and I had my own preconceived notions of what masonry was or could be. And over the last 18 years, in telling people that I was a Freemasonry, that I joined this organization, that I was going through the degrees, there's so much misinformation out there about who we are and what we do. And it's interesting to me that so many modern day Christians are scared of Freemasonry when the the tide actually has turned as far as Freemasons were probably the most respected members of a community, the ones who
Yes.
built churches, the ones who gave people an open space to talk about faith. And we can get into the history of it, but I think the first place we have to start is where we are now as an organization and how we are helping and benefiting society and why we exist.
Yes, and I want to thank you, Mo, for bringing this subject up and wanting to talk seriously about demystifying Freemasonry. Uh, it is an organization with secrets as opposed to a secret organization, which most people uh, confuse the two. Yes, we do have secrets, but uh, unlike my father, who I didn't know was a Mason until I was 35, and turned out he'd been a Mason ever since I was born. But that's the way the old generation was. You didn't even let people know you were a Mason. It became known in your community that you were a Mason by the good works that you did. And I'm glad that you brought that up. That it used to be that Freemasons were the most respected men in the town. Like our founding fathers. All of the major voices in our founding of this country were Freemasons, and the reason was because of who we are. We vet people, and when you know that a man is a Freemason, it's a lot easier to put your trust in what he says and what he does. And I think that that's coming back. And I think that we did ourselves a disservice by being so secretive, like my father was.
Yeah, I think people took it and, no judgment, right? And sometimes when people have questions and we don't have the answers, we retreat and we don't necessarily share with them because we don't know who we're sharing the instructions that we're giving and the knowledge that we were given with and
Correct.
what they could use it with. Well, with the invention and creation of the internet, the floodgates have already somewhat opened and that information is pouring out. And how I see it is there's so many gurus out there and there's so many people who are talking about manifestation and creating your reality and going to the intangible realm into your imagination, that same place where you create the concept and idea of God. And this is why I found that it was kept a secret. It was a not a secret society, but a society that have secrets. Because if you give that ability to someone who isn't going to God in the intangible realm, well, there's a lot of mischief and disastrous things that they could create and then bring back into this tangible realm.
Yes, and
And
that in fact has happened. Yes, you're right.
yeah, and it happens every day. I see it all the time where people they want, and this is the number one issue, right? People want money. And what are they willing to do to get money and what they think it takes to get money
Hmm.
or to get that bigger, better house, car, job, uh, impact, influence, community. And I say this on every episode, Brother Bringo. I don't know if you've seen every other episodes, but most of the people that I've found that have gone and attained these desires, they still feel empty. And they take that emptiness and it just compounds. And what I feel and what I've found that's not happening is when they go to that intangible realm, they're missing the because God has given us the free will to create. Any man can step into the intangible, into that imagination, and bring into reality what they're imagining, whether it's their fears or whether it's their hopes. And unless you go to the creator, you you'll come back with the thing, but you'll come back with an empty feeling. You might have fun, you might have pleasure, but you won't have the joy and peace of the Lord. And that's why that's why it was so held back from the populace, this method of manifestation, because we didn't know what people were going to do with it. And operative Masons had discovered how to manipulate the tangible realm by going to the intangible and learning these methods and learning these quote unquote secrets, but it wasn't really to keep everybody else in the dark. It was more of a, hey, this can be used for the wrong purposes. And one of the ways that I describe Freemasonry is it's like the Jedi, right? Well, are you going to blame the Jedi in Star Wars for the Sith that were created, who were Jedis who turned to the dark side? And are there Freemasons who have taken these lessons and then abandoned their oaths? We're all men, we're all sinners. They absolutely have. And they usually demit from their lodge or they create a new organization based on the same symbols and based on the same methodology of creating in this tangible realm those secrets. And secrets are just things that are unknown, right? When you find
Yes.
those things out and you want to establish them in this realm, are they doing it with God? And that's where I feel like the they might have abandoned that concept. And in order to drive people, men of faith, away, they created a scary version of it. They created a version that people would run away from or people would blame for their problems because everybody wants to blame someone for their problems. Well, why not blame this
Yeah.
secret society
Yeah,
who
and
they
that's
have
one of the problems with Freemasonry is we don't have a single spokesperson for Freemasonry. Once you become a Master Mason, you are your own spokesperson for Freemasonry. And I think that scares a lot of Freemasons. You know, for one thing, they have to study. They have to think about their relationship with deity. They have to think about their relationship with other people. And that's a scary thing when you're coming from a place of non knowledge. And that's one of the things that we as Freemasons seek to do with our brethren is bring them to knowledge, bring them to light. I mean, that's what we call the holy light of Freemasonry, which is the Holy Bible. And that doesn't mean the Christian Bible. A Bible is a generic term for a religious treatise. And so the Quran is a Bible, the Bhagavad Gita is a Bible, the sutras are Bibles. The Upanishads are Bibles, you know. That's just a term, and since we live in a Christian country, when you say Bible, everyone assumes you're meaning the Holy Bible of Christianity. Uh, but you have to think of, like you said at the introduction, um, all religions go to the same place. They just do it differently because we need different languages to speak to different aspects of ourselves. You know, one culture does not equate to another culture one on one. You know, words don't translate word for word. Ideas translate better, but that's something that we have to put in words. And if you say it wrong, you're going to get mistaken, you know. And I think that's a fear of a lot of Freemasons, you know, when we tell them, okay, you're a Master Mason, now you're a spokesperson for Freemasonry. Really? Holy Hannah, I didn't think about that, you know. So that's a scary thing because it puts you on the spot. You know,
Yeah.
people ask you questions about Freemasonry, and you're right. If you don't know the answer, it's scary.
Yeah, I
So
think
who do you blame for that? Yourself.
right. And as we're spokes and I, whether it's the Christian Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita, I think we are meant to speak up for it, but it's more of,
Hmm.
coming from the word of the Christian Bible and all of the other Bibles is you shall know them by their fruits.
Yep.
And what fruit are they creating? And I think that's probably one of the misnomers of Freemasonry is these signs and symbols are starting to be used by people who are not actually Freemasons. And then the
Hmm.
common known version is, well, the Freemasons use the square and compass. The Freemasons say, "As above, so below; as within, so without." And well, that's Masonic, and because it's something that I'm left in the dark about, it leaves people open to make their own interpretations of whether it's being used for good or evil based on how it impacts their life.
Yes, yes. And like you said before, Freemasons are made up of human beings, and we as human beings are flawed. Uh, we are, like you said, all sinners in some way, shape, or form. And until we address that and try and make ourselves better people, that will always be in the forefront of how we project, you know, is if I can't understand something, then it must be beyond me. You know, it must be like supernatural or evil or something, you know, when it's beyond us, it's in the dark, and things in the dark are scary.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where the secrecy of it all, how I explain why Freemasonry or how Freemasonry is a secret. It's like, well, is brain surgery a secret? Like, brain surgery exists, and then you're like, okay, well, someone needs to do the brain surgery. Well, then they have to go to school for a certain number of years and learn.
Yep.
And then would you actually trust someone who's only read about brain surgery in a book and never actually done it to do brain surgery on you? Like, you probably wouldn't. You probably want a doctor who's experienced, and you're going to go to the most experienced doctor to get it. And so Freemasonry, and that's one of the things with the modern day internet, is all the information is out there. You can read and learn about Freemasonry and about building in the tangible realm, but until you actually start to practice it, you won't actually be a master of it.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I heartily believe in is the tenets of Freemasonry, how we operate, why we exist. I think that is for everyone in the world. You can only be certain kinds of people. You know, you have to be a man, you have to be of legal age, you have to believe in deity. Uh, and we're all made up of people. But the only way that you can better yourself is to think about the intangibles, what spirit creates for you, what other people create for you, and how you deal with that. Because frankly, the only thing that we have control over is how we deal with the situations in which we find ourselves.
Yeah.
And so if we all study the tenets of Freemasonry, when we come up against those murky places, those dark places, those places where we don't have a full understanding, and yet we must go forward with whatever understanding we have, then if we know the tenets of Freemasonry and how to react, how to conduct yourself in situations, you'll be better off for it. And because you're better off, everyone around you is better off. And that's kind of one of the big secrets about Freemasonry. We want the guys who come into Freemasonry to become better men, better husbands, better fathers, better sons, um, just better people to be around. And the only way you can do that is to study it with good faith. And I mean that in every way that you can think of the term faith. Um, you have to have faith in your spirit. You have to have faith in yourself. You have to have faith in your uh, your friends. The people you hang out with. And one of the things I think that scares men away from this is when they come to Masonry 101, which is a class I'm sure we'll talk about in some depth at a point. I tell them this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You have to be in this for the rest of your life. That's the attitude you have to have. And it doesn't matter if you're a Mason or not. If you study the tenets of Freemasonry and do that for the rest of your life, you will be a better person, man, woman, or child.
Yeah, I
And
think
that's kind of the point.
I think that's a great starting point, right? Is first we want to kind of dispel the darkness and the notions around it. But the Masonry 101 class, that's what I hope that these segments will also turn into. So as we dispel the misinformation, that we also give people information. And it's funny, the other day we were on the phone, John, you're like, well, are we live now? Because this conversation, and that's what
Yeah.
this show is, hey, we dive into these conversations and we want people to hear these things because they're not secrets. Now, giving you instruction and initiating you, those, like you said, they are secrets, but we're not necessarily a secret society. And we want to share with you as much as we can before you take a oath before the Lord, whether it's, and that we'll talk about secret oaths because that's the biggest pushback I get from modern day Christians is
Yeah.
take take no secret oaths, like in Matthew 5:34 through 37. I'll pull it up here. But over the next week, John and I will put up and we'll get together some visual aids. This is kind of just the intro call where we'll pull up these things and we'll show you exactly, the geometry of it all, the sacred geometry of it all, and how to build in this world. And as long as I assume people coming into this stream are people of faith and people who believe in Jesus or people who want to believe in Jesus. And we want to, and pun intended here, lay that cornerstone of here's a place to start, and here's a place to begin. So, John, you teach a Masonry 101 class for people who are interested in Masonry, and let's go ahead and get into it. As far as what would you say at the beginning of a Masonry 101 class, and let's jump off from there.
Well, mostly I would introduce it with some sort of history because that's one of the biggest myths that we have to dispel is the history, and that's for within the craft and without the craft. Um, Nobody really knows when what we call speculative masonry. You talked about the operative masons; those are the layers of stones, um, and those are hmm, it's kind of hard to get into something without um, getting too much into the weeds right away. But the history of speculative Freemasonry really came to the forefront about the 1600s with the Renaissance. And that's when we started the formal process of making Grand Lodges, which is the system that we operate under now. We started out as stonemasons. I mean, I've read some of the rituals that we have. In fact, I have three different operative stonemason rituals, and they are remarkably similar to ours, which is no surprise, really. Most people think that's where we came from. Um, that's a start. That is where we started. There's no doubt about that. However, the variations that spun off from that at a time during the 17th century in Europe, there were thousands of Masonic degrees that were written, and Masons were writing them and selling them because they thought it was a good system and they wanted to spread it. And they wanted to make money off it too. I mean, like you said, money is a major driver. And so we started off with a whole bunch of rituals, and we kind of distilled them down. We've got several different Masonic organizations now, which arose from a bunch of those uh, degrees that were written. The Scottish Rite, the Shrine, the Grotto, the Order of Eastern Star, all of the appendant and concordant bodies to uh, regular lodge masonry, which is Blue Lodge masonry. That's the basis for everything. If you join the first three degrees, then you are able to join anything else within masonry. Some are invitation only. However, you won't be invited if you're not a master mason. So that is indeed the start of all your Masonic journey, is understanding the Blue Lodge itself, and that is consisted of three degrees. An initiatory degree, a second degree, and then the final, the Master Mason's degree. So you start as an entered apprentice Mason. Then after you do your work there, and I'll explain work in a little bit, uh, then you are allowed to go to fellow crafts. And once you complete that process, then you're allowed to go to Master Masons. Now, all of these are voted upon by your brethren to see if you have attained the right amount of light in masonry. Um, and that's where I'd start.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. I think one of the we're it's no surprise we're both in the United States. We happen to both be in Texas and in the Austin area, and we're both members of Austin Lodge 12, the Austin Scottish Rite. If you are interested in learning more about and being a part of this discussion, you can always come to Austin Lodge 12. We have a great Masonry 101 class. Now, of course, this is an organization for men. We might have women viewers. There is an organization for women too. And I'm sure John is going to explain the difference as far as why men and women separate when we come here. Uh, but one of the things that was kind of surprising to me about masonry is when I joined and I learned those first 3 degrees is even the instructions, the way the words are set, the way we operate and conduct business, it's really not a secret because if you're an American, you've heard these things before. You've seen the way we operate before because it's built into the very foundation of the United States of America. So when people say, oh, well, we're a Christian country because our founders were Christians, a lot of them were deists, a lot of them were theists. But there was one common factor in that they were all Freemasons. And to your point, we thought that system was pretty good. And so we
Mhm.
decided, hey, let's build a country on it. So I don't think that in the first 3 degrees, there's much of anything that's brand new if you are already somewhat informed about how the United States of America operates.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that a lot of people just conveniently either take out of their lexicon or just forget about it because they don't know enough about it or whatever. But, our founding fathers were, the majority of them were Freemasons, and uh, there was a reason for that. And it goes to foundational aspects. What makes a good foundation? Well, we're Masons. You think that's going to mean something to us? You bet it does. I mean, you were talking about laying the first stone in the northeast corner. That's what uh, stonemasons traditionally did, is started in the northeast corner. And what that speaks to me, is that Freemasonry expects you to form a foundation for your future moral and Masonic edifice. And those are terms that we use. And Mo and I will be using a lot of Masonic terms that you will probably recognize because Masonry has become a part of our common language now. Um, for instance, the term agreed. You hear that all the time now. You never used to hear that 20 or 30 years ago. But that's something that we say in Masonry for, I agree with you. Well, it's just easier to say agreed. And so that has become part of the common lexicon, and that came from Freemasonry. And there's a lot of that you as listeners will understand and recognize as we go about this process of talking about what it is to be a good man of faith and a good Freemason. The two have to be hand in hand. And that's, I think, another thing that scares a lot of potential candidates away is we expect you to be a good man. Now, frankly, I'm a bit of a butt at times, and I really rely on Freemasonry to help take me out of that sphere. Like when I'm driving down the highway and someone cuts me off, instead of giving them the one finger salute, I say, okay, thank you for allowing me to practice patience, because that's a virtue. And virtues are one of the things that we study. And for those of you who want to get in a little bit deeper into the weeds on virtue, you can go to masonry101.com, and in resources, you'll find a list of virtues there. I meditate upon those virtues every day. Well, not all of them. I do one a day. I just pick one and just meditate upon it. And I do that every day, and that helps me um, streamline my life, make my day start better because I do it first thing in the morning. Um, um, this morning it was on honesty, which I have meditated upon. I mean, I've been doing this for years now, so I've meditated upon that so many times, and every time I do, I come up with something different. That's what meditation is about, to open your mind to more things than just what's right in your face. Uh, so meditation, that's another good thing that we teach in Freemasonry. Not every lodge, but we at Austin Lodge 12 do, because we feel that that's an important aspect of being human and being a Freemason.
Yeah. Let's get into a little bit and this is something that I don't think you and I have ever discussed. So we're going to be put on the spot here. but going to the word and talking about taking oaths and taking vows. Now, one of the ways, let me just pull it up here, and we'll go to Matthew 5 533. And this is the common pushback that I get against Freemasonry, and I'll kind of talk about how I see it. And John, if you want to talk about how you see it, I'm gonna put so. And this is the reason I'm putting you on the spot now is because people in the chat eventually are going to start putting us on the spot where we're going to have
Oh
to
yeah.
just talk about these things. So let me see. I yeah, I know how I can do this. Here we go.
Technology.
There we go. Awesome. So I like to hop into the word here and talk a little bit about um, well, let's address the pushback first. So in Matthew 5:33, Jesus says, "Again you have heard it was said to the people, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made." And then the very next verse, and this is where the pushback comes, is, "But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, or for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this is from the evil one." And the reason I bring it up is because, John, this is the switching back here. This is the pushback that I get. Well, you swear secret oaths as Masons, and are what my the reply I give is, well, are you married? Didn't you make a vow to your wife? So what are you swearing by, and what are you swearing to happen in the future? So if you say, hey, I swear this was the truth, or I swear this will be the truth, it's more of in the moment of to simply say yes or no. You don't have to give an answer to swear by the Lord, because we don't have that authority. So we don't swear, in my opinion, in our oaths by the Lord with his authority, but we swear to his authority, that him having given us this power to make a commitment, that we are doing it for him, not not by him, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the oaths that we swear are really to each other. We use deity to sanctify that oath. We're not making an oath, like you said, by God or to God or anything like that. We're making an oath to each other, sanctified by our deity.
Right.
Um,
And that's
and
why I
that's how I
compare
say
it
it.
to getting married. When you take a vow, you're
Yeah.
taking a vow to your wife,
Yeah.
and you're sanctifying it through God.
Yep. Exactly. And that's exactly how I look at it. You know, that's why I say and that's a beautiful thing about Freemasonry. Once you become a Master Mason, every other Master Mason knows that you've gone through the process. You have been vetted, because we do a very good job, generally, of making sure that the man that we introduce into Masonry is the man that he says, and is one of those that we want, that has the good qualities, that has at least the basis for making a better man, and as a consequence, having a better community around him. On my Masonic business card, I have a quotation that I found on several Grand Lodge websites that says, through the strengthening and improvement of the character of the individual man, Freemasonry seeks to improve the community. So it's really all about the community. And the only way that any of us can influence that is by making ourselves a better person. And that's the whole point of Freemasonry. And there again, that's one of the things that scares people away. Uh, and I've seen several young men come in and I say, this has got to be for your whole life. And I don't see them again because it's scary, especially when you're a young man, in your 20s and you don't even know what your life is about. And so it's a difficult and once again a scary place because they don't know enough about it. And we won't tell them. You have to take certain things on faith. We will tell them a lot, and that's why people who come to Masonry 101, none of them are Masons uh, to be able to come there. So I encourage all men to bring their family, whatever it is, to Masonry 101 and ask the questions. Because the questions that we give are only questions that can be answered to, excuse me, but I'm dating myself, but I call them muggles, people who aren't Masons. uh, and so if your man is coming in, uh, come to and ask your questions, or make sure you ask the questions of him when he gets home. Because it is, like I said, it's for everyone in the world. The tenets, how we practice it, is up to us. But what we practice, we put out there. It's known in the community, uh, um, or can be known. So, like you said, and I've said before, we're not a secret society. We do have secrets, but our society is not. We're out there, and we encourage you to come and, talk to us, question us. We're up to it. We're grown men. We can handle it. So come on.
That's a great point. And well, John, I don't know if you've done a live stream before, but as we gain viewers, I have to keep reminding people you are are here to. We're not coming at you, and we're not being instructive. We are having a conversation, and we want you to be a part of that conversation. So as we gain viewers, if you're watching this live, chat in. If you're not watching this live, if you've come back to this in the future, back here to the past, we welcome you to drop your questions in comments. We read them. We will discuss them. We want you to feel free to be a part of this conversation that we're having and hear how two Masons, when they sit together, they speak. And so, John, you'll have to forgive me, but throughout our communications, I'll keep reminding people to, hey, jump into the conversation, be a part of
Yeah.
this. We'll bring your chats on stream, and we're here to dispel that darkness and bring light to questions you might have, because a lot of people hear these conspiracy theories around masonry and, oh, the Masons did this and the Masons did that, and John and I can give you an answer if it was us or not. um, but
Yeah. Yeah,
we
that's the whole point. We want this to be conversation. And one of the beautiful things about Freemasonry, and that the young men that have come and sat at the Masonry 101 table, is almost everyone who does that is a seeker, and they want to know stuff. And where can you go and meet with, dozens of men who are willing to sit down and talk some serious stuff with you? You know, how does this affect my life? How can I make my life better, and consequently the people around me? Because that's the whole focus, is the people around us. The only way that we can influence humanity is ourselves, one man at a time. And when you come to Freemasonry and you want to talk some deep stuff, that's where you can do it. You can't find that anywhere else. I mean, uh, Mo, from going to your church, the church has a lot of really good people in it. Are they willing to go down this rough path? Maybe not so much. Not in a group, you know, because it's scary. And that's one of the things that, we as Freemasons, we sit around and we talk about this stuff because it's important. In order to make ourselves better, We have to get through this stuff. We have to talk about it and dispel our own rumors to our own selves. I've found that the easiest person to lie to is me. you know I can lie to myself with the best of them, but I have to get out of that. I have to dispel that, and I do that by talking with my brothers. If I get a little bit off track and I'm talking with somebody like you, Mo, if I'm getting off track, you'll say, hey John, think about what you're doing. And I'm hearkening back because when you were talking, I don't know, just a few minutes ago, it reminded me of after you went through your fellowcrafts degree. We walked down the hallway in the Scottish Rite, and you turned to me and you said, John, this degree has brought me so much closer and made me understand my religion so much better just by going through the degree. And you had just gone through the fellowcrafts degree. And to you, it made a huge difference in your life immediately. Now, that doesn't always happen, but it did to you.
Yeah, I think that confirmation of those things that we know to be true, that we are curious, like, hey, am I the only one who sees it this way, or am I the only one who read it this way? I go back to how I found Jesus in the Quran here, right? And Jesus, the
Mhm.
most referenced person in the Quran, and other than Muhammad, and only in that sense because the verses are written, "Oh Muhammad," meaning God talking to Muhammad. But in going back and learning about Christ and learning about Jesus, and that same, right? The historical figure, but also when I say Jesus, I mean the metaphysical. And when I say Christ, I mean the metaphysical. Was there
The
a
archetype.
historic person that became manifest?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is historical proof that he was, not just in the Bible, but also in the Quran. Go figure. And one of
Well,
the
and
ways,
in the writings of Josephus.
yeah. And one of the ways I see it is the prophet who was Muhammad, from which the Quran was derived from his revelations. He was a Paul. And a lot of Christians don't like to hear this. Paul was someone who was against Christ and then had an
Hmm.
encounter with Jesus and wanted to tell the world about him. I believe that the prophet Muhammad was the Arab Paul. He was someone who learned about Christ and wanted to teach the Arabs in a way that they could understand who the Father was and who Jesus is and was, both literally and metaphysically. And whether it's the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, I believe the one common thing above it is most of the people who pick up this text will not be able to live it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's huge. That's huge because uh, people who actually read the religious texts um are very few. The most of the believers have not read the entirety of their major religious text. They picked out different parts, and that's one of the ways that religious zealots become that way is they pick out parts. They don't do the whole thing. And uh, another thing that I teach in Masonry 101 and everywhere I go is context. Everything that comes into your mind, you have to understand the context, where it's coming from, who it's coming from, what the background is. And the more you know about all of the things that led up to the information that's coming into your brain, the more you understand about that, the more you'll understand what's actually being imparted. And that takes the entirety of it. If you only read a part of any religious text, you can become radicalized very easily because it's only a part, and that's like making your hand your brain, right? It's not going to know what to do with that. It's only a part. It doesn't know about the rest of the body. It's just a hand. Well, it takes the whole body to make that hand work like it's supposed to work. Think about that when you're reading your religious text. Um, and frankly, I read almost all of them. All of the major ones anyway. I've only read a dozen Bibles, and I know that there's hundreds out there. Uh, but I encourage all of you, read more than just one text of your religious text. For instance, I've read, geez, I don't know, probably 20 versions of the Tao. Well, every text that we have that's religious is ancient. Think about just the language that has changed since then. And unless you understand that fully, and we can't, it's a translation. And every translation has translators, and they have to put themselves into it because that's the only way you can translate. Your understanding of what's going on with those words to translate them into another language or a more modern language or whatever. Um, One of the things in Freemasonry that will help point that out to you is, and you can find it on masonry101.com, is the Hallowell manuscript, which is one of the first uh, speculative Freemason tracts ever written. And the earliest one that I found is 1390. And if you read that, it's in Old English, and then next to it is a translation into modern English. Holy Hannah. Read it in the Old English, make your own translation, and then read the translator's version. They're going to be different. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
it's important that you read more than just a major work of your religion.
Yeah, interestingly enough, speaking of language, I've covered this on a previous episode, but and there's a lot to unpack here and there. And today we're just scratching the surface. This is just part
Oh yeah.
one. I like John, I like to keep these to an hour so someone visiting us in the future here in the past, they're not scared like, oh, it's a 2-hour podcast I got to listen to. We like to keep it to an
Right.
hour. We got about 8 minutes left. But the modern day English that we speak, and I've recently learned this, is the only language that's not its own language. English is a combination of all the rest of the languages. Old
Yeah.
English, if you were to read anything in Old English, you would not understand 90% of it.
Oh yeah. Chaucer. Yikes.
Yeah. And the same way of that holds true, right? 90% we agree on, and so often it's the 10% we don't agree on that pushes people away.
Hmm.
And I challenge modern day Christians to this all the time. They're like, well, the Quran says this, 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 and this, but they're only pulling the 10% on what they disagree with. So
Yep.
are you really pulling someone closer to Christ by telling them why they're wrong? Or are you going to make more of an impact and bring them closer to God, someone who is uninformed, by not saying, hey, this is where we disagree, but hey, this is where we agree?
Yeah, there's in our political climate today, we are so disparate. And one of the things that I really like about the Governors Association, um, they are trying to form I don't know exactly what it is, but a way of doing things better. And they're calling it disagree better. And you just made that point, you know. Uh, the only way we can disagree better is by finding our commonalities. Well, we're common here. We don't disagree in this 10%. The only way we're going to find that out is by disagreeing better.
Yeah.
So that's a
Ex-
very good point, though.
And one of the principal tenets of masonry is who can best work and best agree.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
why we can bring together men of different faiths and build a civilization like the United States of America, or build a better self in ourselves. So we build ourself, we build a community, we build a city, a state, a nation, and in the world. And the principal tenets of being a republic or being a democracy, right? Where do you draw that line? And there are people, and that's why we are a republic and not a democracy, is because there are people who don't know how to work and agree. And then they but everybody needs to have a say. And so we elect officials that do know how to work and agree, or should know how to work and agree.
Yeah,
We'll get
good. That's
into
an
the
important distinction.
yeah, we'll get into the modern day politics of it all one day. I try to stay away from it, but you can't help but, hey, where we were and where we are, whether it's make America great again, as in how did we used to agree and work together, to, you know, democracy, right? Like making sure everyone has a voice in how we work and agree, and making sure everyone's interests are best served. There's going to be disagreement there, but the best place to start is where we agree. Now, today we've just scratched the surface, right? John and I were like, the best way to start something is to just do it. We're 56 minutes in, and John, because of the technical difficulties, I did miss an opening prayer. I would like to I give my guest, every time I have a guest on, the opportunity to close us out with a prayer. We say goodbye to you today for now, but we'll be back next Wednesday. Hopefully, after this, John will message me and say, hey, let's do it again. Or, no, I don't want to do that again, but I have a feeling we're going to do this again. So,
Oh, I
John, if
don't
you,
have to message you. I'll do it right now. And I would like to offer a prayer for everyone, and I will do it in a Masonic sense, since they're kind of based upon that. So I want everyone to assume an attitude of prayer. Great architect of the universe, we want to thank you so much for being with us here today and for being with us every day in our daily lives, doing what we do and hoping and praying that we do so in the best light we can in your name. We pray these things. Amen.
amen. So let it be.
So mote it be.
Let it be.
Thank you, Mo. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. I will see you again when I see you, but hopefully I'll see you again here next week. Anyone who's watching this, chat in, drop some comments, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. You never know when we'll go live. I try to keep a set schedule, but sometimes we just go live randomly because we have something on our hearts, and that, we're just fishers of men. This message isn't for the populace. It's for those who are on that same frequency, or those who want to be, and those who are vibrating at this level. And we welcome you, and we'll see you again next week. Have a great one.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
John.